Kat, thank you.
All right.
All right, we get to sit a little, right?
A little. We've been sitting a lot.
All right, I don't feel like I've been sitting a lot. It's like, wait a minute. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about CDP and tying it together with marketing automation. But before we get into it, right, each of you have distinguished superpowers. Can you give us a little bit of your background around your professional journey, where you've been, and for this crowd, digital superpowers?
Yeah, sure. So Nick Chappelle, I work for 14 West. We provide technical services for a network of 15 publishers in the global market. Our publishers are anywhere between financial publications to health and travel and retirement. I've been in technology, my entire career. I started in IT and networking at corporate levels, and then moved into front-end web development, and finally working with marketing teams to enable marketing channels. And been working with the Blue Shift team for 5 years now, really helping to implement Blue Shift at that global scale for our customers.
Awesome.
And I'm Kat Covert. I'm with US News, but started my career like 15 years ago selling digital marketing when we used to sell 300 by 250s in like 5 frames to get all the words from an ad in there for a publishing company. So I feel full circle now that I'm back at US News, but I have been heavily involved in CRM lifecycle for 8 years. This is my 4th Blue Shift company that I'm actually using. I think it's my 7th that I've tried to bring Blue Shift to. And I've consulted on a couple companies getting Blue Shift as well. So I'm a power user of Blue Shift, and my superpower really is thinking about like automation triggers from customer behavior, real-time events, and working with marketing teams to activate those into real journeys.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's jump into it, right? As street-tested marketers, when you think about the challenges that are in the publishing space along with the themes that you see, could you share a little bit about what you're encountering on your day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. I think we echoed some of this already today, between third-party cookies being deprecated, cost for ad sales going up, and your ROI is going down there. Advent of AI and how to leverage that in the stack. For us right now, it really is around that content velocity and making sure that we can create enough content that's consumed by our customers, but we want to stay authentic, right? So I think we were talking earlier about how AI might miss that authenticity if it's not trained correctly. And so we're really looking at how do we start to create that velocity for content where we're consuming it in this multifaceted way, with individualized context and things like that, but still being true to our brand voice and authentic, and not maybe over leveraging AI to generate the content, right? We want to be authentic, and that's really what has driven a lot of our success over the years.
Yeah, I think we heard a little bit about that need for conversational marketing, not being so sterile. Kat, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I echo that sentiment, but I think from a broader perspective, there's still a big challenge in buy-in from your leadership team, from dev and engineering and product. If they haven't used this type of platform before, when you're on an archaic system that you think is working fine to their perspective, and they don't think about like a fast go-to-market strategy and like how do you activate data in real time and like turn that into a marketing message. I think like banks talked before, the credit union, like it used to take you weeks to get a segment, so now you've lost the timing of like something pertinent, like rates are dropping tomorrow because the Fed's meeting. Like a month later, they'll probably be back up again, so who cares? And that was an actual lending tree problem once. And we were able to solve it like overnight because we were able to say, anyone who had this rate, send this email because we know. But unless you live in that world, like I have for the last 6 years basically, I live and breathe like thinking about life cycle every day. But someone who doesn't work in a platform like ours, sometimes it's really hard to make that jump of like, this is how you have to think about it. And then what challenges does that present as a marketer? Like, I think we're really lucky and fortunate to have this platform and use it. But I do see a lot of people when I do consulting like struggle of that jump of like old thought to new thought. And efficiency is great, but like if you don't know how to create that efficiency, there's still a struggle for the buy-in there. So that's a different perspective externally, I think.
So Kat, in keeping with those challenges, right, when you think about CDPs and marketing automation, how do you actually tie that together when you think about your strategy and planning forward, right? Most marketers are not, I would say, super entrenched in the CDP side of the world, and they're downstream of the data. You've been a super power user of the Blue Shift platform. You've had your hands on the data side. Could you share a little bit with the group on how you kind of cross that chasm into like, I have the data, now how do I actually use it?
Yeah, and I think what I just mentioned is like if you're not used to having data at your fingertips, sometimes it's hard to like start thinking about, I have all this access to stuff and what can I start doing with it? So it's really like what I love about Blue Shift and the CDP world is you're merging historical data about the user and real-time activities. And that's really where my benefit is I want to know what the customer is doing right now on the site, and then is there any historical impact? Maybe, and that might curate the content that I'm sending to them in email or SMS. The flexibility of Blue Shift has really allowed me to do a lot of creative things with data. So what I usually do is like no matter what company I'm at, I just like try to look at it from a customer perspective, like take the marketer out of it, because you know we all think we know best, and we don't. The customer knows best, right? Like they know what they're looking for, and we have to help guide them along that journey. But that doesn't mean like forcing our opinions on that journey. It means like letting the recommendations do the work. I think Jeff talked about that at Sweetwater a little bit. Like we want to believe we know the best of everything, but like the computer probably knows better than us, unfortunately. And so what I've done with like real-time data is be able to, like I created a fake call center using Blue Shift. With my voice on the phone, I was like Sally Silicone, and I was the call center, but I was able to use Blue Shift's cloud apps to connect real-time activities. A customer filled out a form on the site. Well, the issue we were having was, even though people were filling out a form, buyers, this was in healthcare lead gen, they weren't happy with the quality that they were getting. So I dialed out to the customer and made them go through a call center of all my questions. And then if they met those questions again, then I was able to pass them on to the buyer. I wouldn't have been able to do that without the real-time data, understanding that at that moment they filled out the form, I was able to initialize the call. And then what was great is if I got their voicemail, I got an event back into Blue Shift that said voicemail and was able to trigger an SMS campaign to schedule a call with a client later on. So it was like the perfect win. And a lot of platforms just don't have that ability. So yeah, the real-time data with historical is great. And yeah, I can't speak to it enough, honestly.
Stitching together those interactions is key, and using that call center. It's great to be creative on that front. When you think about CDP and marketing automation, we talked a lot about first-party data and how critical that is. Kat just said, like, customer knows best. We think as marketers, we know. But Nick, can you share a little bit about, like, how are you using that first-party data to think about analyzing the behaviors in campaigns as well as kind of in browse?
Yeah, so our marketers are using data every day, right? Like we consider ourselves digital marketers. We're analyzing and looking at channel performance and all the things that everybody's like looking at today. Really, for us, we've really started diving into setting a lot more goals and being more goal-oriented with our events and making sure that we are tracking all the things that we know that we want to hit along that customer journey and setting up the feedback loop for those goals in our campaigns to say, has the user met those, right? And then we can measure the performance of did we set out to set the right goals in the first place? Like, are those actually converting and being longtime customers, or however else it might show itself present itself in the data? But having that feedback loop for the goals and being able to leverage it for predictive analysis as well has been really beneficial to us. Being able to generate those scores for, say, purchase intent or something along those lines. Looking back at using those scores in campaigns to see whether or not that had a lift or an effect is definitely something that we're exploring now, and making sure that we have a pipeline for new goals and new events that are coming into the platform, and making sure that we're taking action on those. Those actionable goals are really key identifiers for your customers, that they're meeting the criteria that you want them to kind of go through, and as long as you can see that that's working, that's what I think is key there.
Yeah. So we're taking data, we're taking content, we're kind of activating it, and we're analyzing, right? When we think about like customer engagement being a critical KPI that we look at across the board, Kat, when you think about like customer engagement and the ID, like how are you thinking about drop-off points and where like that data is then coming into the future of your strategy and the way that you think about leveraging all of the things that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I like to talk about my time at Tree a lot, because it was a really pivotal experience for for thinking about life cycle in that way. And like I mentioned, I think about like being a customer and going through and finding the gaps. So a lot of times I just go on my site and I'm like, all right, if I'm trying to find this, like how do I do it? And then usually I find most sites are terrible and you can't find what you're looking for. So hopefully AI prompts will really help with this. But you have to do a lot of searching. So a lot of times on LendingTree, and right, like the goal of all of our engagement is try to get people to do something on our site. So is it like read an article? Is it buy something? And if they don't, then why didn't they do it, right? Like, let's be real, at the end of the day, that's what we want people to do. Like, read more content or buy something. So why aren't they doing that? And I know today's been talking about like AI and hyper-personalization, but I like to remind everyone that sometimes it's taking a step back and realizing like there's really simple steps you can do to grab back customer engagement. And that's where I've found so much success, which is annoying in some ways because I love data and personalization, but I can't say that I've found tremendous lift doing that. I found the lift just being like, just acknowledging that you visited the site and didn't do what I wanted you to do. So following up really quickly to be like, hey, like, did you find what you were looking for? If not, here's these easy choices. Like, here's the easy button for you, customer. And being able to personalize that and be like, okay, I know you came in on a refi page, and in the last 14 days you closed on a personal loan. So like, what else are you looking for? Take out the personal loan button, put in other buttons. So there is still some personalization there, but just remembering like you don't have to keep driving people down the same path over and over again. Like sometimes bringing it back and be like, maybe you need something else. And that's where Blue Shift's really good at that. Like it's just a simple browse abandon or browse cart or whatever. But it has a huge impact on customer experience, especially because I know as marketers, sometimes we all have disagreements with our product teams about user experience.
What?
I know, right?
Talking about?
I mean, they're great partners, absolutely. But, we all think about things a different way. And so they might think something's super easy, but like we know it's not. So just like tell the customer, here, do this, like come back. Obviously in e-com though, we've developed a problem of like, everyone comes back for a coupon. So like if they're abandoning and they need a coupon, I think that's where like the AI is really gonna start helping, like, is this person's propensity discounts? Okay, personalize this message for that. Are they willing to buy it at high price, but like, I don't know, they just got ADHD that day and we're looking on their lunch break, like just show them the item again. So I think that's where recommendations will start helping a lot. I think, again, Jeff mentioned this from like Sweetwater, like absolutely do a browse abandon or browse cart or browse abandon form campaign, and then use other content recommendations in there, like acknowledge they were there, they didn't do what you wanted, and then give them some other options.
Awesome. Nick, keeping with that theme and kind of piggybacking off of what Kat was saying, like when you think about campaigns and keeping that attention, you sit in that very like unique catbird seat of working with your teams and informing them on ways to stay engaged. When we think about like taking all the information today and kind of pairing it into actionable items, can you share with the audience here a little bit about the tactics and recommendations that you're providing out to your teams on how to keep that engagement, right? It's not just a one and done, like I got you for a second. We've got to keep it going.
Yeah, so we recently had a campaign that was a little bit different than what we normally do. So one of our affiliates, typically what they would do is send out, a campaign. There's some sort of promo landing page with some videos or content that they, is relevant to that campaign. This has worked well for us. We record lots of first-party data there. We're understanding the products that they're interested in, how long they watch the videos, right? We get all this great first-party data, and we always have leveraged that in our campaigns. But what we did this one time just recently was, instead of doing it via a video, we actually hosted a full week-long session, and each day was a highlight for a different product or service that organization offers. And they did a bunch of hype leading up to it, got a bunch of people registered. And what we were able to find was, in a shorter window of that 1 week, we got so much of our audience that we generated enough first-party data to know which one of our programs were most successful right there off the bat in that 1 week. We were able to understand, from sales, which ones were performing. And then it was an opportunity to really engage them at a higher customer level, customer experience level, and really talk to them about what the full product suite offering was and what our highest tier membership for that publishing group is. And really what it did is it highlighted the person-to-person engagement a little bit. And to what we were saying is, it's not always just the machine understanding the system. There is this personality and this element that we need to know our customers ourselves. And so we took that data, and now we're feeding it back into the system. The purchases and all that stuff came back. And now we're using that to look at our lifetime scores for the users to understand, did these users who purchased during this cohort, are they going to turn into better lifetime customers than the customers that just watch the promo and they disappear maybe after one billing cycle, right? So now we want to see if we can really start to engage with these users, maybe even on a more personal level, keep that personality engaged, see how we can leverage AI to really keep that communication going, and then look back at the 6-month mark, the 12-month mark, and what was the engagement and the level of retention with that audience versus our standard audience, right? And so it's always, that's really the role of the marketers, is really to just always be looking back at what we've done, how it's performed, and then how we want to make tweaks and what we glean from that experience.
So you said the word, right? You said tweaks and kind of looking back, right? It's going to lead us to our next kind of topic of conversation that, maybe we're going to cringe a little bit around, but like testing and optimization, right? The friend of the marketer. How do we look at incrementality? How do we look at the things that we're doing? When you think about like applying testing and optimization to that environment, right? We talked about a lot of data. We talked about content. We talked about bringing it together. Can you share with the group a little bit about your strategies around that kind of theme around testing and optimization?
Yeah, so testing is one of those things you got to continuously do, right? But we run into problems with content velocity, right? Like, do you have enough content to test all these variations? In comes AI, but you might lose some of that authentic voice that you might have had. So what I encourage my users to do is really go into it without a fear of failure. I think a lot of times, marketers will go in and not test something because they know something else has worked well in the past, and so they're afraid to do something new. But really, the only reason that you did that last thing was because you tried something new in the first place, right? We're always constantly trying new things, whether it's a new channel or a new piece of copy or whatever it might be. And there are ways to maybe do a pseudo test where it's not really a real test yet, right? Jeff was talking about earlier how they have some propensity score product scores versus blue shift product scores, and you're going to see kind of which one does better. Well, you don't actually have to test any separate campaigns and say, oh, we're going to send score A, campaign this, and score B, campaign that, because that kind of invalidates the test a little bit because you're testing two separate campaigns. So what I encourage my users to do sometimes, especially when it's around a predictive score or something like that, set up the campaign so that it's your different segments, and then you can analyze after to see how those segments would have performed if you had broken them out in separate strategies, right? To start to see that feedback loop, right? So we want to get that feedback loop and understand how those users engaged with the campaign. Did the scores actually perform and do what it said, right? So if you were doing a predictive score for purchase, right? If you split your campaign to two separate triggers and say, okay, just send them the same thing on the outset, then you can look to see if that campaign performance, did campaign B or trigger B actually have better sales performance than A? That's a way to validate that model score, right? And then say, yeah, now I actually do want to test breaking out, sending group A down path 1 and group B down path B, because we think that if we engage the users this way, we might get some more sales, right? So it's a way to start looking at data, especially, we're talking about Blue Shift has, enables marketers to look and analyze where, we might have needed IT teams or, other analytics stuff. Those propensity scores, at least for us, aren't outside of our Blue Shift instance, so we have to look at that data within Blue Shift and the campaign data. We could always move that data attribute out and maybe analyze it separately without having to run some of those campaigns. But yeah, I'd say test, try things out, maybe in a low-level effort that isn't maybe as scary as testing a full-blown campaign. Start small and then tweak from there. Right?
Never good to boil the ocean, right?
That's right.
Especially when it comes to testing, and if I repeat back what I think I heard you say, because it's a really important point, right? When we get into testing, right, it's not just testing for the sake of testing and creating content that has to go through legal approval or offers, right? Use some of the insights to infer segments and then see how did those segments perform differently, right? Then you can start to build on those insights to build your case study to broaden your scope of your testing. I think that's a really important piece. Kat, I know that you're in the midst of testing and you're also probably in build mode as you're standing up things. Anything else that you want to add there around testing to kind of soothe the fears of some marketers around like, testing needs testing strategy, what do I do?
I know, the jaded marketer's approach. I have to say a few things about Blue Shift that I've noticed compared to other platforms. Blue Shift has control buckets, which are a lifesaver for testing, especially when you want to do cohort analysis. It's not just that you need to do an A/B test this one time in this campaign and was this conversion higher than this one? It's when you're building those long trigger automations, is this group of users in the same segment actually getting a better experience than the others, and understanding the long tail data is super important, because I've used other platforms where you run a test and then the next day the users get it, who knows who's getting what, and it's really hard to isolate those users, because in testing you're supposed to isolate the variables, but if you can't even do that in your platform, how are you ever going to do that unless you go to your data team, and we all know that can be really fun. So I think that's where audience insights is going to be really valuable. I'm basically a one-person marketing team, and I have been at many companies. I've stood up Blue Shift, and so I find that to be really challenging as, marketers every day are being asked to do really big analysis that I never wanted to do in my life. I hate Excel. I'm not going to lie. And
you love hate Excel.
I love hate Excel. It's so great. But so when I have to start answering all these questions, of course I want to do tests, but then I think about all the responsibilities that come with testing is well, then I got to have the data to back it up. And do I want that on me? No. But sorry, I like to joke about it, but really testing is very important. Usually when I have a team, I like to say always be testing from my sales background. And I think it's really important to just understand, is it segments that we need to test? What is the test, and what are we trying to get out of it? I don't know if anyone's a True Detective fan, but Jodie Foster, recent season, was saying, what is the question? Like, ask the question. And so that's what I try to think about when I approach testing is like, what am I asking? Like, what is this test doing? Is a subject line test is great, but like, is it really going to do anything in the long term? I come like from a fail fast mentality. We always had to have tests, like high velocity, always had to have like 50 tests running, but like, what did that do for us? So I just want to remind everyone that like even building, like converting to Blue Shift and building journeys might be the test, right? Like, and it's okay to feel like you're taking a slower pace and just understanding like, holy crap, I just made a journey. Like, this is huge. And maybe these results are really great. And then that leads on to the next iteration of the journey. The one, I always like Lending Trees, you know, I had a lot of data at Lending Trees, so I got to do a lot of cool things. And US News has a lot of data too. I just can't talk about it. And so, I was like, is Sam here? Maybe I can. But talk to me, find me outside. Like one of the experiments was like a simple test of just saying like, I wonder what happens if I send someone an email because they didn't get an offer from us. And my boss was like, that's a terrible experience. I'm like, why? Because they didn't get an offer? Like, doesn't it feel worse to give all your personal information and never hear back from the company? Like, I think that's weird. And so I was like, let me just start this email. So like the one thing was a test, right? And it proved to be a really great experience. Like it made $500,000 in a month, like, woo, which was pretty big. Oh, now my boss is here, so I can't talk about it anymore. But then it was like, okay, well then now I have their credit information. So like, if I know they didn't get an offer, is it because they had bad credit? Or like, is there something wrong with their offers? And the answer was there was something wrong with their offers. It wasn't their credit. It was like the matrix that we had built to give people product offers, like wasn't AI. It was a matrix that like once it was capped, it was done. So people could have gotten these offers, but like our matrix capped it or whatever. So like that was another test. And then another iteration was like, okay, so now you didn't get any offers. Try again tomorrow. Specifically at 9 a.m. when our offers are open again. So it's just like things like that. So I just want everyone to remember, like, you don't have to always do A and B. Like testing can be iterative and built on each other. And a lot of times it's just because you ask the question, what if?
Awesome. Really good stuff there. I think it eases the idea that like I don't have to be in that heavy testing mode all the time. And I think as marketers, we sometimes feel like we prescribe to that without
Absolutely.
questioning it. So kind of aiming, like Manny said, for on-time arrival. I like that line. We're going to move towards wrapping up. I think when we think about like the intersection of data and marketing automation, could you share with the group, each of you in closing, kind of what excites you in addition to Shobik's product roadmap about what's coming forward, right? And where you see the biggest opportunities that you can exploit?
Yeah, so I'll go first. Speed to market. I think I heard this echoed, by Jeff earlier as well. Once Blue Shift is set up and you have, your data warehouses and whatever else might be hooked up, implementing new tests or new, campaigns and things like that are rapidly fast, right? Once that foundation is solidified, there's a lot that can be done, very, very quickly. And I'm really excited, about some of this new AI capabilities that are coming out as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we won't have jobs in a couple years, but I am really excited about AI. But I think specifically for Blue Shift, and I think people are underutilizing syndications a lot. And I think if there's one thing that you can go back to your teams today and say, like, we need to do this today, it would be audience syndications, which is funny because I'm an email marketer and like don't care about how other channels perform. That's a lie. I do care about everything. Omnichannel, remember? So I really think that's where the future is with you're pairing like real-time activity and behavior, and because of now the cookieless, whatever is happening out there with the cookies, the empty cookie jar that we're about to face. Like that's going to be using your first-party data, leveraging in real time to your paid channels. I mean, I used Blue Shift when there were no integrations, like we had to code everything. So it's like so awesome to see like now you can just click buttons and like integrate everything. But yeah, absolutely go back to your teams today. Bake. You need to do it. Audience ads. I remember you saying that earlier, like do it today. I think that's where you're going to find huge ROI. And it's more of a cost savings ROI, if that helps. It's not necessarily that it will make you more money, it's going to save you a lot of money.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the insights. Let's have a round of applause for our customers.
Thanks.
Thank
It
you
was a
so much.
pleasure.